open file number 6. So we have discussed about the debt schedule. Now we need to see what is there in the equity schedule. In the equity schedule, if you see over here in the debt part, we had seen that out of 2,700 million rupees, we are raising 1620 in the form of debt, right? So the balance portion, which is 40%, we're going to raise in the form of equity. So let's come back here and compute it as equal to 2,700 multiplied by 40%, which is 1080. Let me just show you the input sheet first. Zoom it out a little bit. Here it is. So we have taken 2,700 from this cell multiplied by 40% of it, because 40% of that we are going to raise in the form of equity. So that 40% has been taken here. Okay. Very similar to what we did in the debt. I spoke about it, that in this kind of project, the majority of the cost, 2,700 million rupees, I'm spending during the construction period. There is not going to be any additional requirement of funds during the operation. So I'm not going to raise any debt. I'm not going to raise any equity. So that equity raised feature I've included here, but I've not taken any assumptions. So if you see, I go back to the input tab, and there at the bottom, I've taken the additional equity raised in row number 40 as 0, because we don't need it. I'm going to take it as 0 in all the cells because I have not assumed any amount of equity that I'm going to raise here. But it is good to have a flexibility that just in case you would like to incorporate a feature that in this year I'm going to raise this much amount of equity, then this feature would help you to incorporate that. Otherwise, you see, the companies usually don't go for a buyback for a project specifically. At a company level, obviously that's a common corporate action which is taken by the companies, that they go for a buyback, they take the buyback value, they consider the buyback value basis the amount of internal cash that they have. Looking at that cash, they'll be able to see what is the extent to which I can buy back my shares, and then they come up with an offer, and everybody who holds the share, they can actually put across their shares and they'll buy it. But this happens only when the company takes a decision, right? It's not a usual phenomena which you would notice. So here it is for a project model, so I'm not going to cover that portion here. That gets captured at a corporate level. So our opening balance again will be equal to the closing balance of previous year, and the final amount that you see here as a closing balance is equal to sum of opening and equity raise. This raise, you see that it's going to remain unchanged. It is going to remain unchanged. It will be 1080 and will continue to remain 1080 over here. All right. Does this make sense? I mean, this is pretty similar to the concept that I discussed in the debt schedule as well, that there is no need for funds, so no addition, no reduction. 1080 equity that you are raising will remain unchanged. Right? Now, in the shareholders' equity, there is another component which is called reserves and surplus. And reserves and surplus basically increases if you have a profit generation during a year. And if there is a dividend that you are going to pay, that is going to reduce your reserves and surplus. So over here, you notice that I have a schedule which is going to start with the opening balance. So it will be opening of the first year will be equal to the closing of the previous year. I've graded that out because you wouldn't have anything in your reserves and surplus until you start your operation. So that's why it's graded out in the construction period. You will start from here, which is basically opening balance of the previous period, which I'm going to copy and paste on the right hand side. And This will increase the extent of profit that I generate each of the years. Now, at this stage, I don't know what is the net profit that the company is generating because we've got it in bits and pieces. We know what is the revenue, we know what is the cost, we have the depreciation, we have the interest. But I haven't really drafted the P&L right now, so I'm just leaving this particular line aside for now. In the next version, when we open, next file that we open, we'll have the P&L ready, and then we'll come back to it and revisit this point, right? So profit during the year, I'm keeping it blank right now. I'll fill it later. And dividend decisions usually aren't taken at a project level because right now, again, think about that perspective. The perspective is we are trying to evaluate the project. I'm not trying to use this model for the purpose of taking some equity or dividend related decision. This is not meant to be used for it. Dividend would probably be decided at the company level, at the holding level, because at one point in time, there are so many projects that this company would be doing, and this is one of those projects. So you don't declare dividend at a project level. You will decide that at a corporate level, at the company level, there are these 20 projects that I'm doing. Take all of that taken together gives me a profit of this, and then I'm going to declare dividend to the shareholders. Right? This is how it happens. So that's why I've not taken the dividend deduction out here because I'm going to take that at a corporate level. So my closing balance would simply be opening balance plus profit generated during the year. You see it's zero right now because I don't have numbers. But in the next file, as I said, once we have the P&L ready, I will come back to this equity schedule and flow that net profit over here. And then eventually you will see that reserves and surplus would show up a balance. All right. If I take a pause here for any questions that you have on the equity schedule. Any doubts till this stage? Now, in this case, you would notice if you've actually practiced your CNC model, then you would notice that we're just revisiting this example by covering the same concepts that we discussed here. So it is actually a good refresher for you to see that broadly the financial model structure does not change. It remains the same. It doesn't change when you move from one industry to another industry. The structure is the same, only the drivers tend to change. The concept remains the same. Right? Over there also we used exactly the same sequence. We started with inputs assumption. We used those assumptions to build the revenue schedule, operating cost schedule, fixed assets part, debt part, equity part. All of this we did over there as well. Here also we are doing it in the same sequence because broadly speaking, the process would always be the same. Whether you talk industry, barring the banks and financial institutions wherein the structure is different, but if you talk about any industry, the sequence in which you should be approaching the creation of model would remain the same. All right. I hope this makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, we can move on to the next sheet that we have here, which is P&L. Now, here I don't have the P&L in this file. So please open file number 7, which is about the P&L. And now creating this P&L is not going to be a challenging task because you've got all the required parameters in place. It's just a matter of a simple plug and play here that we need to go to the respective sheets, pull the relevant values and drop it over here. It's going to be a straight computation here because the typical structure is that you begin with operating revenue. That is available in the revenue calc sheet. You need operating cost. That's available in the operating cost calc sheet. You need depreciation. That's there in fixed asset schedule. You need interest expense. That's there in the debt schedule. All of these items are already available. We don't have to do any workings anymore. We have the schedules ready. Now we just have to simply go to the respective schedules and pull those values and plug it out here. Right? And here, once the P&L is going to be ready, I'll come back to the equity schedule and fill this line which I was talking about. Remember, I said that this is the line that I'm going to fill in this sheet once I have the entire P&L ready. All right. So let's pull the revenue figures to begin with. Here we have the revenue in the row number 17. Let's call it from there. That's the revenue coming from the revenue calc sheet, row number 17. go to the revenue tab, pull it from there and put it across. Now next is the operating cost. So we have the operating cost in the operating cost calc sheet. Let's pull it one by one. I have to go to row number 15, row number 24, and inverted replacement cost in row number 32. Then you can take the sum of all of these operating cost elements to be able to see what is the total operating. So revenue from the revenue calc, operating cost from the operating cost calc sheet, take the total, and when you deduct this, you get EBITDA, which is earning before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Fair enough? So this completes the P&L to the operating income level. Now we have to pull the depreciation and interest expense. So depreciation, I'm going to go back to the business schedule, pull it from row number 21. And interest, I'm going to go back to the debt schedule and pull it from 19. So once you deduct both of these, you will be able to see the EBT, which is earnings before tax. What is the profit before tax? Because this is the item that we are going to compute now with the income tax. And income tax is going to be dependent on this figure. What is our taxable profit? What is the base on which the tax has to be computed? And the best part about these kind of projects is that you would typically see, not always, but you would usually see that when you have a project completed and a customer readily available right from day one of the operations, why would you incur losses? You would typically have profits right from day one. So here the justification is sought whether 2,700 million rupees of investment is actually justifying the return that we will generate in future. So I am having a positive profit right in the first year. I need to see whether 2,700 million rupees is actually generating the income that I deserve, right? That is the last step that we will do here because that's nothing but simply the project IRR, right? So let's complete to this level and then we'll move on to the income tax part. So that's also pretty straightforward that you have to take this and multiply with the tax rate which is given here. So that's what we get here. ET into 25%. All right. In the meanwhile, while you're working on it, let me know if anybody has got any questions. We can use this time to address the queries that you have on this. But this completes our P&L. So once you have all of these items ready, you could basically compute the net profit. Just trying to fit everything to one single screen so that you can see all of that together. So the formula that I put over here for the income tax is written this. written like this, and this final profit is nothing but EBT minus income tax. So once you have all of this ready, you can just plug it on the right hand side as well and drag it to all the 25 years on the right hand side. You get the net profit computed for all the 25 years of this project. And those of you who already know what capital budgeting is all about, uh, you would have typically seen that whenever we compute IRR or we compute NPV, we have an initial investment, and against that initial investment, we have some sort of a cash flows, right? How do we get those cash flows? Because in the books, when we kind of computed the IRR or computed NPV, we were given the cash flow that this is what the cash flows are. But the question comes up that how do you basically work out those cash flows? This is how you get it. You have a project, you create a model for it, you structure it according to the requirement, like 60% debt, 40% equity is the assumption that I'm taking here, and then get the future stream of cash flows. So future stream of cash flows basically begin with computing the net profit from the P&L, then moving to the balance sheet, having everything out there completed, and then finally going to the cash flow statement. That is going to give me the stream of cash flows that I have to use for computing the project IRR. All right. So I'll take a pause here for you to complete this sheet, and then after you're done, we'll move on to the equity schedule and see what reserves and surplus we're able to see over here. Take your time, and once you're done, please put in the chat box that you're done. All right, I see a couple of you have already mentioned done. Fair enough. I assume all of you are done. Then let's give it another minute or so for everybody to complete this sheet, and then we'll move on to the equity schedule part. All right, let us move ahead then. Now, in the equity schedule, as we discussed in the the previous file that we were talking about, we had this equity schedule, which we couldn't complete because we didn't have this profit. But now, after your P&L is ready, this profit during the year comes from here. You see that the first year we are expected to generate 58.7, such a powerful project, generating net profit right from day number one. Then you drag this to the right hand side and see that on a cumulative basis, every year I'm generating profits. On a cumulative basis, my reserves and surplus balance is going to shoot up to 5,319 million rupees. So we'll have a cumulative cash, we will have a cumulative reserves and surplus balance of 532 crores. And you see that this 532 crores of profit that I'm generating in the next 25 years is on the back of 270 crores of investment that I've done today. I can't do a straight comparison to it because there is a time value of money which is going to be attached to it, but we will come to that part a little later. But broadly speaking, we have at least the first leg completed. We know what is the profit that it is generating. In total, in absolute terms, ignoring the time value of money, we are going to be generating 532 crore rupees in the next 25 years against an initial investment of 270 crore rupees. How we use it for IRR, we will see that eventually because there is a play coming from the balance sheet as well. So we will see that how and what kind of adjustment we have to do. All right, so take a minute to do this and then we can move on to the next sheet, next file rather. Let me know if you have any questions till this stage. All right. If there are no further questions, I think we are done till P&L and we have got all the schedules ready. Please open file number 8 and we would partially complete that file and conclude today's session. Please open file number 8. We will have, because now I just want to make one statement here that tomorrow we have the last class of this course, right? So we'll have 5 hours to discuss everything, but I would be able to finish off this topic a bit early. So I'm just going to keep the last 1 hour or maybe after the lunch break once we come back around 1:30, 1:45 once we assemble back. The last 1 hour, 15 minutes, I'm going to keep it open to address any questions that you have. So Prachi, you also highlighted some questions that you had related to the DLOG, DLOM, and control premiums. Somebody else also asked some questions in the previous classes, which I said that we would cover later. So please be ready with your questions. And if you can think of certain questions or you already have some certain list of questions that you want to ask, you can use the chat window, put it across there. I'll keep a note of it. And tomorrow, in the last 1 hour, we will be able to discuss those open questions that you have. Right, but this particular case we should be able to finish off by 1 o'clock tomorrow, which is the first half before the lunch break, and then we will. I'll open up. You could ask any question related to this topic, related to financial model that we discussed before, Excel topic that you want to ask any questions. Feel free to ask any questions in that last 1 hour. I would also be utilizing roughly about 15 minutes to 30 minutes time to discuss the advancements that we have seen in MS Excel. But that you would only be able to view on my screen if you don't have the latest Office 365 installed in your machines. You wouldn't be able to try your hands there. But there are some new Excel functions which have been added. Those are very, very powerful functions. So if tomorrow I'll also discuss some of the functions like, so somebody was asking this question in the Excel class that what is this XLOOKUP? I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. There's this function called sort, this function called unique. There is a function called filter. All of these functions I'm going to talk about tomorrow. These are new functions available in Office 365. If you write equal to XLOOKUP, I'm just going to give you some heads up. If you write equal to, see some sort of a parameter listed out here, the syntax is visible. If you try it in your machines and you don't get to see this function, it means you don't have that latest Office 365 installed in your machine. This has been recently added, and to be honest, in my Excel also, I got it updated just a month back. So these are the 4 functions I will discuss tomorrow. These are like very, very powerful functions which Excel has actually introduced to ease out our work, because whatever functions I discussed in the class 1 related to VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, index, match, all of those we would kind of cover here. Okay, Zayan, you're saying that I already discussed it in the last class. Oh, great. If I've already done that, that's fine. Fair enough. Thanks for bringing it to my notice. Then, fair enough. We have additional 15 minutes to talk about it. Fair enough. Thanks, Ayan. Thanks, Ayan. I missed on this part. If you've already done it, fair enough. But other than this, if you have any other questions, as I said, please use the chat window. Let me know the questions that you would like to ask, so that if there is any additional data that I need to put across, then I will be able to put across that content as well. So Abhijit, macros, 1 hour would be too less for me to bring this concept of macros. But let me see if I can do something. But because if I the moment I bring macros into discussion, I won't get time for any other questions. So let me see what best I can do for the VBA macros part, right? So I'll see, because I need at least 1.5 hours to discuss the basics of VBA macro. But I'll try to see Whatever logic I can cover on the VBA macro, I'll bring that up. I'll bring that up. Definitely don't worry about it. I'll bring that point. Right. And other than that, also, if you have any questions, please use the chat window to ask it. Okay, let's come back to this balance sheet. Here we have the list of assets and the list of liabilities and equity out here. So let's pull these data points from the base schedules. We have the fixed assets to begin with. In this sheet, we don't have to spend too much time in terms of bringing the relevant items because all of these we already have in the schedules that we created before. So plant and machinery, land and everything, we have in the fixed asset schedule. So let's go to the fixed assets part. In the closing balance of net fixed assets from there, which is the closing balance of plant and machinery, and then bring the closing balance of land from row number 26. That gives me the total assets. Here also you might be wondering that why are we not changing the land? As I said before, as a matter of prudence, we wouldn't change the land value. In our books, we will continue to park it at the historical cost. But I will definitely pick that appreciation part, how we use it for an analysis. We'll cover that part tomorrow. So that gives us the fixed assets. So once you've pulled the items from the fixed asset schedule, I'll come to the receivables and other parts later. Let us move on to the shareholders' equity and long-term debt because for those we already have the schedule. So fixed asset schedule is giving us the input that we have to take in the balance sheet in the fixed assets part. Then we have to take the debt schedule and finally the equity schedule. So let's move here. We have the shareholders' equity and we also have the long-term debt. So let's pick the paid up equity from the equity schedule. Over here in the row number 15, I have it. We have to, we can call it from the equity schedule row number 15 and reserves and surplus or the retained earnings that we simply call it. That also is available here in row number 20. That gives you the total shareholders equity. That gives you total shareholders equity. The next is the long-term debt. This we can get from debt schedule. Here we had included the closing balance. This closing balance will pull out here and that will give us the closing balance of debt. Let's just drag it on the right hand side. It gives us the complete data for the shareholders equity and the long-term debt. So we've got fixed assets from asset schedule. We've got long-term debt for debt schedule. From the debt schedule, we've got the shareholders equity, both the components of it from the equity schedule. So we are only left with the working capital, which is the current assets and current liabilities. These are the two things that we are left to capture over here. So once we get those two items also, we'll be done with the balance sheet as well. Well, I'll cover the cash flow statement tomorrow, but at least try to complete this balance sheet component here. The only current asset and current liability portion is left over here. Though we have discussed this concept in the CNC case, wherein I showed you how you could use the credit policy in terms of policy that we follow with our debtors and the policy that our vendors follow when they supply the raw materials or any other things to us. So we definitely give some credit to our customers and we also get some credit from our suppliers. Those two things taken together will help you work out the current assets and current liabilities. All right. Let's move on to the current liabilities part. I hope there are no questions till this stage. Let me just check the chat window if there are any questions. No. Okay, fair enough. Now, here is the current liability. Just try to visualize how you get current assets and current liabilities. Current assets are connected to this, primarily connected to the debtor balance, which comes from the sales. Current liabilities is basically connected to the amount that I have to pay to my vendor. Let us talk about current liabilities first. In the P&L, if I take you back here, what is the amount that I pay? So there is some expense which I have done, which I've shown in my P&L, but I have not paid in cash. That is going to generate a liability for me. That I was supposed to pay 100 rupees and I did not pay 100, I paid only 70. So 30 rupees is outstanding, which will appear as a creditor balance in my balance sheet. That exactly is the amount that I have to see here. So in the P&L, you see there are three expenses that you get here. O&M expenses, insurance charges, inverter replacement cost. Out of these three, let's talk about insurance first. We don't typically get any credit period from our insurance supplier that I'll pay premium later, but you start my insurance. It doesn't happen this way. We usually pay insurance in advance, usually, right? So we don't typically get insurance payable to a great extent. But the majority of it, let's go to the inverter replacement. That also is like an AMC that I would take, or I would park certain funds. That's also set aside. But the amount payable, the majority of that actually comes from the O&M expenses. You remember, I would be giving this O&M services. I'd be availing this O&M kind of a support from a third-party vendor, whom I am making a payment every year or every month or every quarter, whatever that period agreed is. Then that person is going to come and do the regular repair and maintenance work for me. We may get some sort of a credit from the third party vendor. So let us check what is that period that we are assuming in the inputs. In the inputs tab at the bottom, you see I've taken two items here. One is the receivable days and the second is the payable days. And payable days are kind of connected to the O&M cost. All right, I've connected this to O&M cost, which means that on an average, whatever O&M cost I incur, 30 days equivalent of O&M cost is outstanding. I haven't paid that portion, right? 30 days equivalent. So what you need to do, if you go back to the P&L, you notice that my O&M cost is 18.8 million rupees for this particular year. I need to figure out what is the proportionate 30 days equivalent O&M cost, because that's going to remain as a current liability in my balance sheet. So I see that this is 18.8 in the first year, which is the total cost that I incurred in these 9 months, which is essentially the cost for those 274 days to be precise. So I'm going to take 18.8 divided by 274. That gives me the per day O&M cost. Multiply by 30 is going to give me the O&M cost payable. That is the amount that is yet to be paid. So we can go back to the balance sheet, compute the per day O&M, which is 18.8 divided by 274, and multiply this with 30 days assumption, which is given here. Right? And let me just drag it on the right side and you'll see this is the amount of current liability that I would be having. I'm having O&M cost per day, which is the total cost I spent in a particular year divided by the total number of days in the year. That gives you the per day cost, first portion, multiply by 30 days. That gives you the total current liabilities related to the O&M that is over here. I see there is a question which has come up which says that why have we not taken the inverter replacement provision? Is that not part of our current liability? See, Abhinandan, it depends. For the inverter replacement, there are multiple accounting treatments and there are multiple ways of actually doing it in reality. One option is that I don't even create a provision. I know that as a matter of fact, after 15 years, I have to replace it. So the inverter cost that is part of my, I mean, I'm just giving you an alternate way or alternate accounting opinion out here. So the 2,700 million rupees of project costs that I've incurred, I would bifurcate that out of this 2,700 million rupees, 20 million rupees is for the inverter, which is going to last for only 15 years. So let me just take that 20 out, depreciate it only for 15 years, and balance portion I'm going to depreciate over 25 years. And at the end of the 15th year, when I'm going to buy another inverter, I will book that as a capex and I'm going to depreciate that inverter for the remaining 10 years. So I don't create any provision at all. That's option number one. Another option is what we have taken, right? I don't distinguish between the first inverter that I bought or the second that I'm buying. I'm going to simply take the overall project cost of 2,700 and depreciate it over 25 years, barring that land cost number. Yet another way of looking at it is that I don't go for an inverter replacement. I basically outsource this to a third party. I tell him that I have to buy inverter. So I'll buy it from you, right? I will buy it from you after 15 years. So that person says that, okay, you can buy it from me after 15 years, but during these 15 years, do you need any repair maintenance support for the current inverter? I would say that yes, I need. He will say that why don't you give me an AMC that for these 15 years, I will repair your current inverter if needed. And whenever that there would be a time which comes when the inverter needs replacement, I'll do that replacement for you. So I'm actually giving him an annual number, a fixed cost, which I'm incurring every year. So I book it in my P&L as an expense. And after 15 years, that person will come and replace my inverter automatically. Right? Then I'm kind of treating it as an AMC. So every transaction in the company will always have two angles attached to it. So like you were asking this question that there is no cash component here. So how does it come to the balance sheet? It will always be treated accordingly. Like in this case, as I said, if I treat it as an AMC, then yes, there is a cash component attached to it. So you are paying it in cash to that third party. That's an opinion that I could actually take here. And that's why I'm not showing it as part of the current liabilities. Or alternatively, if you want to go with that opinion that I'm going to create provision for it so that I will have sufficient funds available, internal accruals available after 15 years to buy a new inverter, I would show it as a non-cash item. And then that provision will be shown in the current liabilities line. Right? So it's just a different school of thought, different way of treating it, one and the same thing. I hope this addresses your point. All right, so we've got all the equity and liabilities component. Now we can actually take the sum of all of this, which is this plus long-term debt plus current liability. That completes the liability side of the balance sheet. And we can now drag it on the right-hand side as well, as this is our total liability. Okay, and on the same lines, I can compute current assets as well, because for the current assets, what we have to do, assets would basically be related to the amount that I have to receive from my customers. Like in this case, Rajasthan state government is our customer. So I'm going to actually sell this electricity to the Rajasthan state government and they will pay cash to me. They'll pay that money to me. And let's say I'm giving them 45 days of credit. So this is related to the sales that I'm generating or the revenue that I'm generating. So I'm going to find out what is the revenue per day multiplied by receivable days. So if I'm giving, let's say, 45 days of credit to the customer, right? So that 45 days means that 45 days of equivalent sales I would receive later. So when I close my year, I would be able to see that 45 days of equivalent sale would still be receivable. I haven't received that cash. Though it is appearing in my P&L as a revenue, I haven't received it. That's why it is sitting in the receivable days. So let's go back to this top and compute the receivable balance. It is going to be revenue per day. So you go to P&L, pick this revenue divided by number of days. That gives you revenue per day multiply with, sorry, multiplied with total number of days that we have got in terms of receivables, which is 45 days. So I'll pull it from here. That gives me the receivable amount. If you can drag on the right hand side. So this is revenue per day. The bracket you see, this is revenue per day multiplied by 45 days. All right. There's another current asset that you see here, which is cash and bank balance, but I'm not going to pick that right now because this cash and bank balance needs to come from cash flow statement. So this comes from cash flow statement. So once our cash flow statement would be ready, I'll come back to this balance sheet and plug this cash and bank balance number over there. Right? And once we plug that, we'll have the balance sheet ready. And at that point in time, we would also put a check to see if the balance sheet is matching or not. So just leave this cash balance for now. Once we are done with the cash flow statement, we have to come back to this and plug that number here. But right now, if I have to put the total current assets, it's going to be sum of these two, because obviously it is blank right now in row number 20, but definitely it is going to be a part of our total, and it will change automatically once I plug the number in row number 20. So that completes the current assets and also the total assets, which is fixed plus current. At this stage, try to make sense out of it and see that why this is 2654 and this is 2720. Obviously, it's not a right time to look at that because right now we don't have this cash position available over here. And once I have the cash position, then at that stage, these two items should be equal. And if I notice at that point in time that these two items are not matching, even after plugging the cash, it's an indication that there's a problem in our model. There's something that we've not done properly over here. Right? So I'll take a pause here for any questions that you have. Otherwise, I am done for the day. Cash flow statement I'm going to talk about tomorrow, and to broadly tell you what we are going to cover in the next 3 files. Tomorrow, once we start, we will revisit the same case. We would start with the cash flow statement in the file number 9. Then we will move on to the IRR computation, which is project IRR. We'll talk about the concept of the land appreciation and the other stuff as well. And finally, in the last sheet, I'm going to talk about the sensitivity analysis. Right? These are the 3 things that I'm going to cover tomorrow in this case. So that's it from my side for today. I am here for another 5-10 minutes. So we are having another 10 minutes. I'm here, but please use this time to either ask questions related to this case, or can you please use this time to put forward the questions in the chat window so that I have a look at it and I can prepare the content accordingly. So, and also make a note of all of that here, that what extra you want me to cover. So I would just keep a note of all of that so that everybody can see. Abhinanda, there is no assessment or no test. Maybe you could, if you would like to actually go for it, you can check with the PT admin team. They can confirm, but nothing that I'm aware of. I'm just keeping a note of all the topics which are being posted on the chat box. Gantt chart. Wow. Can do that. Fair enough. Prachi, X NPV, X IRR, I'm going to talk about tomorrow. So I'm not writing it here. That will be covered in the IRR sheet that we have as part of this project finance modeling. So that will be covered tomorrow. Case studies for our practice post this course. For this, Richie, I think you would have to speak to somebody in the GT admin team. Whoever was in touch with you, they shall be able to share some practice case studies with you. So that will be a better approach, because I'm sure they would have a lot of material which they can share for the practice purpose. They are looking at the money control website to get data. Looking at the Damodran website for getting the beta factor, and maybe you could get beta over there as well. I mean, like the beta factor, you have the equity risk premium there, and all that stuff is available there, right? Um, what else? I mean, I've written all of that. I don't know if you'd have sufficient time to cover all of it. Because if you just leave this macros apart, I think we would have time to cover all of this. Because macro as a standalone topic is pretty big, but I'll see what best I can do over here as well. The data sources. Data sources. Fair enough. I'll talk about that. In the meanwhile, Abhijit, you mentioned this point about data sources. Just for everybody's benefit, the data sources, definitely Google is the best, that you do a Google search that's called desktop research and get everything that you have in the public domain. But usually there are some specific list of data sources which tend to provide good amount of data points and information. I would just keep a note of it here. Go and check it out today. I use IBEF. I use IMF World Economic Outlook. These are the two sources which I personally use pretty often. I use investing.com website for getting risk-free rate, which is like a government bond yield. I'll talk about that tomorrow. Like these are some of the sources that I personally use pretty often, apart from obviously Damodran's database, which is there on the website. But maybe can I just request all of you to go through the IBEF website, IMF website, and investing.com for getting all of this. Country risk premium, you will get all of that from Damodran. So when I will talk about Damodran website, I'll walk you through with what are the source, what are the files that he has loaded on the website, and what kind of information we get from there. So I'll keep a tab on that as well once I open the website. Practical aspects while doing valuation. I don't know. This is a little open topic. How I would be able to cover it, I don't know, because valuation concept I've already discussed. Prachi, if there is any specific point that you would want me to cover, I can bring that angle. Probably let me talk about something called a mid-year adjustment in valuation, subtraction adjustment in valuation, probability of failure for startup companies. These are the pointers that I can probably discuss and bring out here. For the financial institutions, actually, the process is slightly different because every time I make the statement, I always exclude banks and financial institution because typically the flow is that you start with P&L, you move to the balance sheet, and then you move to the cash flow statement. But in case of a bank, we first have to go to the balance sheet and use the data to go back to the P&L, right? That's slightly different. Valuing private companies. So when I will speak about the discount for lack of marketability, control premium, DLOC, I will also cover this specific risk premium. These days, there is a term which is being used, which is called COVID premium. No, I don't agree to this, but yes, I'll speak about that as well. There's something called as a small size premium. All of these are actually a small size premium is applicable for a private company which is of a smaller size. A model that I've developed for a client or a party, we can mask the name. So these pointers that I'm going to discuss, Anand, on the DLOC, DLOM, etc., I will actually be talking about with reference to valuation that I would have done for somebody. So this is definitely going to be practical. But I will have to figure out if I can actually share it in the public domain, even by masking name or something. I would have to see that. I don't promise that I will show anything, but let me just think over it and we will talk about it tomorrow then. But I will be able to cover the concepts that I usually follow. Like that's why I mentioned these points here. What is the small size premium, company specific risk premium, and all that stuff, and probability of failure, stub adjustment, mid-year. I discuss all of that. I will discuss all of that and I capture it while doing the valuation. So you would get to know when I will discuss it. Great. My cases, yes. I will discuss my cases out there. whatever valuations I have done, I'll discuss the insights from those, because when I discuss these pointers, I would have to bring that perspective in place. Only then I'll be able to explain what is the small size premium and why we include it, what is the CSRP, why we do it, and how we do it. All of that stuff we will discuss tomorrow. That's fine. I've taken a note of all of it. I think this list can keep on increasing, but given the amount of time that we have, hopefully I should be able to cover all of it in that time. All right. I think that's it from my side. Then we can conclude the session for today. And again, apologies for the initial hiccups that we had in the beginning of the session today because of the network issue and all that stuff. But hopefully we'll be having very good network tomorrow, and you won't face this kind of a problem. So let's see you tomorrow, and then we will talk about the remaining case related to this project finance modeling and close off these factors as well that I've listed out here. Thank you very much, and have a great evening ahead. Bye-bye. The solution of the small company valuation, Prachi, I can bring that tomorrow. I thought that it was pretty straightforward after discussing the camera manufacturing case study, so it was not needed. But let me actually bring that tomorrow. And in that case study itself, I'll talk about all of these factors. So good that you brought it. So maybe what I can do in the telecom case study that we discuss, I'll talk about the valuation, and in that valuation itself, I'll incorporate all of these factors. Right? Great. So what I'm going to do after this session, in next 5 minutes, I'll be uploading all of these solved versions of the Excel file that we've discussed today in the same Google Drive from where you check it, right? So please visit that link after 5-10 minutes, and you will get the solution files of today. Thank you.